Well, guess what? Someone has tagged me, which apparently in YouTube speak means they've asked you to do something daft. And they chose to do something slightly odd, and they've decided that you too shall do something slightly odd. So my tag was list 5 things that are interesting about yourself. Now, sadly, I was tagged by 2 different people, which means that in reality I need to tell you 10 things, which was rather difficult to figure out. So I made a little list, and I'll go through them. Now, Canadian Patriot, 1973, and the Sparta Cat both challenged me to do my 5 things tag, so here you go. Now, a couple of interesting things that people may not know about me. The first thing, of course, is that I'm from a family of 5 siblings. I have 3 older brothers, and I have a twin sister. So there you go, that's the first thing. Yes, I have a twin. So my sister, who managed to find me, hello, yeah, we're twins. And no, thankfully, she does not look anything like me. She looks much better than me. Anyway, second thing, I like DIY and woodworking and doing things with my hands. I like doing electrical wiring, for instance. I've always been a fiddler. I like to fiddle with things and take things apart and figure out how they work and sometimes put them back together again. Quite handy with cars, for instance. Although they keep putting computers in these darn things, and if anybody who's ever worked in software knows, computers just break. So my next car, I think I'm going to buy something that's maybe 30 or 40 years old. Actually has a regular carburetor and can actually be repaired should it need to be. When I was young, I used to really like riding my bicycle. Mainly because I lived quite far from my high school, so I would have to ride my bike to school and ride it back. Of course, not in winter. I guess I lived. I'm not sure how far away my high school was from where I lived. It was something like 1.5 miles, but it was a bit of a good ride. And I had at one point had dreams of being in the Tour de France, but then I gave that up because that was far too athletic. But I did get rather large thighs and calves at the time. Which thankfully have disappeared, and I look fairly normal now. I think camping is fun. I've always been an outdoors kind of guy, like looking up at the stars on a cold, fall, autumn evening, looking up, looking at the stars. And of course, in Northern Ontario, if you're very lucky, you actually get to see things like the Northern Lights, which is an absolutely remarkable thing to see. You do have to get quite a bit away from the cities to be able to see it properly, but if you ever get the chance, quite wonderful and quite beautiful, and just demonstrates so well how wonderful the world is. Right, so I used to spend my summers as a child, what we would affectionately call the cabin, which was a small plot of land. Well, I'll call it small, but anyway. Quite north of Toronto, up near Bancroft, which is in the north of Ontario. And effectively the cabin was sort of a refurbished cowshed. But my parents had done a nice job fixing it up inside. There were a few bedrooms in there, and it was quite a nice place, a great place to spend the summers at. And it was there that my father taught me how to shoot a rifle, which I seriously appreciate now. And I don't know how many times I've been tempted to go to a fair and shoot things with rifles, and I keep occasionally coming back with rather large bears, so I stopped doing that because where am I going to put this bear now? Anyway, so where are we at? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we got a few more now. All right. So my father, I mentioned my father. Hi, Dad. How you doing? Just so that people know about my father is a sort of a minister, a lay minister in a church, and that's about all I'll say about him because I don't want to give away too much of his private life. But effectively, that makes me a preacher's son. I'm sure that will get the tongues wagging. Yes. The only one who could ever reach me. Okay. So I grew up in Canada. I was born in England. I grew up in Canada. And I left Canada to go work in Israel. And I worked there for 3.5 years before moving to the UK. And that was quite an experience, quite a revelation, actually, to go live in what would effectively be called a Middle Eastern country. Now, I know some of you out there may think that, anyway, I don't really care what you think. Anyway, I lived in Israel, and during the time, it was about 11 years ago, so when it was fairly peaceful, and not too much was going on. My favorite painting is Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. Beautiful painting, beautiful painting. I mean, Sunflowers is nice, but Starry Night is... He was in such a state at the time. If you've ever looked at the history of Van Gogh and what he was doing and where he was and how he got stuffed into a mental institute and the things he had to deal with. That's why I thought I would share that with you. And I was sort of a toss-up between what's my favorite song of all time. Now, it's kind of difficult. But I think I've narrowed it down. I think I'm going to go for Simon and Garfunkel. Now, of course, we could go for Scarborough Fair, because that's a funky little song, but it was more the Bridge Over Troubled Waters. Absolutely adore that song, especially the cannons in the middle. I don't know. It does something to me. It's something about my childhood. So there you go. There's my 5 things times 2. The Spartacat and Canadian Patriot 1973. Now, I have to pick a few people. Now, this is kind of difficult because I know lots of people have been tagging everybody else, and everybody's basically, talking to everybody else. So I'm going to go for MCon. I can't remember the rest of your username, but MCon. It will be linked for those people who want to know who this is. I'm going to go for Deb Truth. Because, Deb, I know a few things about you, and I'm just wondering how much you're actually going to share with people. That would be funny. And I'm still waiting for the picture, I tell you. And the third one. Now, the third one's a little tough. I'm only going to do 3, but I got to think a little more. So I'm gonna have a little think about that, and I will notify the relevant people, and I'll make a link here on the side as to who I choose for the third. So there you go, 5 things times 2 about me to make you connect us all together a little bit. Okay, everyone, peace, love, understanding. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning when I will attempt to do another report. Thanks. Bye.